You know where you are!
This is Appetite for Distortion.
Welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion, episode number 485. My name is Brando. Welcome back to the podcast, Mr. Bryan Rolli. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Brando. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Some of you may remember that Bryan was on. I say some of you, and it wasn't me. I knew you were on before, but I had to remind myself what episode it was. 359. It's just a random number. I'm sure you remember that. I'm sure you re-listen to that episode quite often. No, you don't. So I'm happy to talk to you today because we follow each other on Instagram, and I just think you're. Oh, before we go anywhere, this is gonna set the table. Let's see the fresh new ink.
Oh, yes, sir.
For those of us watching on YouTube, the Appetite for Destruction
See if I can
cross. That's a good angle, and that's a very well done tattoo.
Thank you. Yeah,
So-
I said back in late 2015, I said, look, if these guys reunite, I'm committing. I'm getting the Appetite for Destruction tattoo. I'm getting it right where Axel's got it on his forearm. I'm gonna do it. And then the years kept ticking along, and finally my wife was like, "Are you ever gonna actually commit and do this thing?" I was like, "You know what? It's time. Time to stop messing around. I got the time. I got the money. Let's go."
So many questions there because I follow again. I follow you on Instagram. I see you rocking out with your band Nerd to Well, and we'll get into that. And you have the Appetite Cross on stage and looking badass. So you had just a bet within yourself, within friends that Axl and Slash would reunite, or Guns N' Roses would reunite. Were there stipulations? How did that come about? Because I don't know if we spoke about that last time when you talked about it, and the fact that your wife encouraged it, I think, is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was no bet per se. It was just, something that I said part offhanded, but there was some seriousness buried underneath that. It's just always been my favorite record, and they've been my favorite band for as long as I can remember. And I remember, as I'm sure you do, Brando, that brief period of time in late 2015 when all eyes were on Guns N' Roses, and as a diehard fan who had never seen the any version of the semi-original lineup, I was just like checking for updates and looking at the rumor mill every day. I was like making myself sick. I was like, man, I'm just like, I'm gonna throw up. They need to just announce something or not. And so yeah, I was like, you know what? I got to commemorate this because whoever thought that we would see it in our lifetimes.
It makes me think of that you should have been on earlier than episode three something, because I was the same way. And my version of throwing up was this podcast was just I was a fan always, just happened to be in radio on the forums checking things, and now I'm doing an extra because of the podcast and the fact that it happened in our lifetime, because I had just seen Slash with Velvet Revolver and Axel with a version of a Chinese Democracy lineup. So in my head, they were together. They were never going to get back together.
Mm-mm.
Never, ever, whatever Taylor Swift says. I don't. I already did a Taylor Swift episode of this podcast. I don't need to go into it more. You're obviously a diehard, so we'll make you. I look forward to your articles on Ultimate Classic Rock because I know it's coming from a diehard. But the one that came out is just very interesting because you're on it, but also the opinions of some of your other, your fellow Ultimate Classicers. Is that a phrase? Can we coin that?
Our ultimate classic rockers. Well,
Yeah,
something like that. We're not the ones making it, but we're there. We're on the scene, the
I know.
proverbial scene.
Proverbial. Fun story. I once got yelled at or scolded, whatever, by a higher up at a radio station by the word proverbial was too highbrow for our audience. I'm like, it's not even that hard of a word. It's not whatever. That's but I digress again. So this is a fun topic that we often talk about on social media. I say here the conversation continues on social media, whatever your fancy is, and the set list is always comes up. We're
Mm.
not talking about new music. We're not talking about Izzy and Steven. We're talking about just this focus of the set list, and a lot of it is, well, is it too long? And that can come with a lot of variables, whether it's getting older, we're getting older, not wanting to be there, or certain songs we want to hear, some songs dare we say that we don't want to hear, even though it's our favorite band. So Ultimate Classic Rock, they came out with this. I retweeted it, and I'm going to call it retweet it. What are you going to call it? Re-exit.
Yeah. No way.
Uh, 5 songs Guns N' Roses needs a cut from there, set in 2025. A roundtable. So we're going to extend the roundtable between Brian and I. Now, I don't know if you have the article in front of you, or do you want me to poorly read your words, and then we'll dissect it.
I've got it up on my end as well. Yeah, I had to remind myself which cuts I made and which swaps I made. So yeah, I've got it here at the ready.
All right, so go ahead. I don't want to mistake your inflection for something, but I think compared to the others that we'll talk about, you were pretty safe. I could say.
Yeah, I do think that my picks for what songs I would cut were probably fairly uncontroversial. And I wanted to make sure to preface this in the written story, and I'm going to preface it this way again with you, but um, and I'm sure you'll understand this, but when it comes to making cuts from a set list from a band like Guns N' Roses, I'm coming at it from the perspective of there are very few songs, if any, that I would be outright unhappy to hear Guns N' Roses play. And if there are any songs that I would cut or would not be so excited to hear them play nowadays, it's only because I've seen them many times at this point. And I'm grateful to have seen these songs performed live. But as a fan who is as a fan who craves something new, but also has to reconcile that with the fact that this is not a band that does things to pander to the whims of their fans. They've always cut their own path forward. I was just I wanted to get into a little wishful thinking per se. So yeah, with that said,
And I
um,
agree with you, by the way, on both accounts. So I'm
mhm,
with you. With what you just said, as far as it's there are reasons why we're doing this. We're grateful for what we have, but we give reasons, and that's part of the conversation. It's not cut just to cut. We're not doing that. There are
mhm.
reasons, so that's part of the conversation.
Right. Absolutely. And again, I appreciate that they are still playing upwards of 3 hours on stage every night. I think that's great. But a lot of the songs that I did cut, A, they've been in the set lists pretty much since the beginning of the reunion, and B, the bulk of them are covers. So with that said,
Mhm.
my choices, and I went a little over, I went to 7. It would be their covers of Slither by Velvet Revolver, and Wichita Lineman by Glenn Campbell. I think they're heartfelt gestures. I appreciate the novelty of them, but it's been a long time. Um, I think they've kind of outworn their welcome a little bit at this point. Or we could, get something a little more exciting in there. Likewise, I think that when it comes time for Duff to take a turn on lead vocals, I could think of a better way to use that moment during the set than one of the punk covers they've been using, which was most recently the Stooges' TVI. And here's the one that I probably feel most strongly about simply because I've heard it a zillion times and because it is such a long song. I could probably go the rest of my life without hearing or watching them play Knocking on Heaven's Door. Um, I appreciate its importance in the GNR canon, but I've gotten my fill of it. Unless they want to bring back Give Me Some Reggae, in which case then they're welcome to keep it for as long as they want. So those are 4 of them. Those are my cover choices. I've got a few originals that I would cut as well. Um, Again, now that the novelty of some new material has worn off, I think we could probably get Absurd out of the rotation. For me, it just kind of sticks out like a sore thumb in the set, and I'll admit, not one of my favorite GNR tunes. Um, I would also probably put perhaps on the chopping block if I had to pick some more. It's not that I dislike it, but again, I think that space could be better used. And lastly, and this might be the most controversial choice, but again, because of the version that it's morphed into on stage, I think they could maybe retire Rocket Queen for a little while. It's I love the song. I have nothing against it. But again, the kind of like it's like a hammy, almost like Broadwayified version of the original. It's such a long, like kind of extravagant production now when they do it live, compared to the kind of sinister, raw original version. I think that again, we could work that out of the set and get one, maybe even two songs in its place.
This is not what today's public wants. People want people, arguing, talking heads, opposite viewpoints. I can't really argue with anything that you said. I agree with you. There are songs that, I would like to keep, and I'll talk about that, versus, or why I might retire a song, different reasons why. But I agree with you on your point, so I'm not going to push back really on you. Uh, Slither, it's just for what I love Velvet Revolver. I was fortunate. I just have seen them twice. I had never seen Stone Temple Pilots. Scott Weiland was almost like it was close to seeing Axel for me than Axel before I saw him. I just got to see him in what 2000, 20 years ago, essentially. Still had a lot left to give, and it was just incredible. But for Axel, I don't know why this the way he's, and I don't feel good saying this because there are people who can take it a certain way. Fans take it a certain way. It's just the way he approaches certain songs now. It just doesn't fit.
Hmm.
I still very much want Velvet Revolver represented. I think there are better songs, better suited for that are not Slither, Fall to Pieces, you got no right. There's Sucker Train Blues can be fun. There's a lot of
Hmm.
things that Scott did in, just to be frank, a not for air, but just the term of phrase. Uh, it's a lower register where I think Axel still has a lot of strength in his voice. And when I say that, look at me, listen to me. I'm a Long Island's, I know from Queens now. It's like, Jill, Brian, talking. I sound like one of, Fran Drescher's, I sound, I swear I would tell people this. I know I've been in radio for the longest time. I love on air, but it's funny because I heard Billy Joel said this, but so I'm not going to compare myself to Billy Joel, but it's funny when the greats say this. I'm not a fan of my voice. I always sounded like Mr. Sheffield, like the male version of that. But for whatever reason, I get enough the people that are okay listening to me. So with Axel, I don't know what the thing with Guns N' Roses, they wouldn't be GNR without Axel's voice.
Hmm.
And I can't critique. You know who said it perfectly? And I'm going to paraphrase his perfection. Is Adam Mars, who a couple episodes ago he does a lot of T-shirts he's done a lot of T-shirts for Axel. One of the most famous ones were the when they were with Snoop Dogg. You know how they're all smiling except for Axel, who's got
Mm.
the mean mugging, and he's got the palm tree that says hell.
Hmm.
He sent me that. So he's like Axel invented these notes, like they're his to own. So it's taking nothing away. But Father Time is what it is, or maybe this is what he wants to how he wants to approach it. There are fan theories about being the lead singer of AC/DC did. It's a slippery slope to have this conversation, but I think you need to have this conversation in order to talk about the set list. So that's why I don't want to take away a Velvet song. I want to replace it with something that's in his wheelhouse. Like,
Yes.
so that's how I feel about that. That said, hold on a second. I need to take a sip of water. That's okay.
Mm. I'll allow it.
I feel like a comedian. Sip uh, is Wichita lineman. I know I get pushed back on it. It's not like I'm some crazy Glenn Campbell fan. I really, it's before my time. I know I'm older than you. Uh, He wasn't. He was before my time. My mom knew who he was. I really remember him from my mom being like, "Do you know Glenn Campbell?" And that's how my mom sounds in my head. You know, he got dementia. You know, he's got. I'm like, thank you, mom. Like that's what I want to hear. That's so sad. Did you hear? It's so sad. Yes, it's very sad. So Axel does the Wichita Lineman live, and I had never listened to the actual version before. I knew of it, and something about it hit me. And something about keeping with the kind of same theme with the voice, Axel's voice now, it fits it perfectly. Like there's nothing. The way he, I know I'm gonna butcher it now, but the line, like just the way he holds it, I think is fantastic. I would be okay because I want the greater good of what fans want. I know a lot of people are not familiar with that song. Give me a recorded version of it, so I can have it and listen to whenever I want, and then you
Hmm.
could take it away. But right now, that might be the only time I get to experience Wichita Lineman is to see it live, which is
Hmm.
a unique thing to say. That's GNR is kind of known for that. You can only hear this live. So those are the only two things. Well, Rocket Queen. What you said that is a tough pick, but I think I have to go into 2025 being honest. I understand what Axel's voice is now, and I think he is still an act to see, but there are certain ways to approach it. So if Rocket Queen left, I don't that wouldn't bother me just because of the way it's been, for lack of a better word or phrase, approached for the last few years. So I'm with you on that. And knocking on heaven's door. I think that's the only one that I missed, right? You said if they bring back some reggae, yes, or Tracy and Roberta, then I will
Mm-hmm.
sing my lungs out very poorly. But yeah, that I don't need to hear that song anymore. Another cover for me, "Live and Let Die." Look, my wife and I, especially my wife being like a Paul McCartney fan, Beatles fan, but being having worked in radio, there are select songs from every band that really get played a lot. If you haven't noticed,
Hmm.
yes, I don't get sick of "Welcome to the Jungle" or "Paradise City." You know, yeah, but "Live and Let Die" and "Knocking on Heaven's Door" are those for me. If they're not for you, cool. And here's the great thing. Yeah, what you said at the beginning, 3 hours is long. It's fucking long, man. Especially now that I have a kid. And if I'm gonna when I bring him, he's probably gonna fall asleep. I mean, thankfully they're on time now, so maybe he can stay up for Paradise City at the end. But short and set, could that be better for Axel's voice? Again, why I needed to have that conversation earlier, which I don't know if you could tell, I'm uncomfortable talking about it because you're talking about the Golden Voice, our favorite band. You know, how do
Hmm.
you do that? You know, how do you? So I don't want to look at it, and I hope people don't take it as criticism. It's just more of like, hey, your favorite athlete gets older, adjust things. Your favorite pro wrestler gets older, and I love seeing the old guys come back, man. I'll pay to
Hmm.
see those. You know, Undertaker comes back. You know, Stone Cold comes back. The Rock comes back. Sign me up. But I'm still watching every week. So I don't know if that's the best analogy. So that's kind of so that's who I would cut. I don't know if you have any thoughts on what I said, but because I basically agreed with you with some caveats.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I mean, we might have even talked about this directly before, either on the pod or on social media. But again, I mean, the reason that we want to go see Guns N' Roses in their 2025 iteration or whatever current form they're taking versus a cover band that can sing and play these songs note perfect as they were recorded is because we're not interested so much in the perfection as we're interested in seeing the authors and creators of these
Yeah.
songs doing their thing. It's like I want I want to see the members of this band, of my favorite band, putting in the work. And if they're having to struggle in spots or reinterpret things or make changes as they get older, that's completely natural. And I'm okay with that. I would much rather see a less than technically perfect performance from this band than a quote unquote perfect performance from somebody else playing these songs. And so I think that line of thinking can apply to the type of set list and the length of set list that we might want to. You're right. I've thought about it myself. Like, uh, would I rather have a more streamlined, all killer, no filler 2 hour set list? Or would I prefer a 3 hour set list that has maybe some questionable ebbs and flows or different dynamics? And at this point, I've seen almost both versions of that from Guns. I've seen some slightly shorter sets in, I think, like 2021. They were doing maybe like 2 hours and 15 minutes. When I last saw them at Power Trip in 2023, it was a full 3 hour performance. And yeah, I'll be honest, in the longer shows, yeah, the mind tends to wander a little bit. You get a little restless, you get a little fidgety, especially if it's like a festival environment and maybe you don't have like a great vantage point. Um, but still, I'm not going to complain about getting more from my favorite band. I think it's just a matter of like both both types of performances have their pros and cons to them. They're both different, and at the end of the day, I am ultimately grateful for whatever version I do get. Um, I've got my favorite shows from them, but I can never say that I've regretted seeing any version of a Guns N' Roses show.
Agreed there. Yeah. No, again, agreed on all those accounts. Oh, that's the one thing I didn't comment on was Absurd. I'm crazy. I like that song for whatever reason. I hated Silkworms, but I don't know whatever reason.
Mhm.
I don't think it's like GNR rose colored glasses that I'm like thinking about. Oh, because just because Slash and Duff are on this record, I like it. No,
Mhm.
just sonically, whatever it is, British punk rock style.
Yeah, yeah, the vocal delivery, especially very low, very like gruff, for sure.
And he would like to bring Shadow of Your Love back, which I think was a great attachment. Also wants to get rid of Wichita Lineman. Oh, look, I know I'm in the minority. I accept it. Um, he wants to also he wants to bring back Hair of the Dog, which I agree. And he's making a dealer's choice. I'm sorry, he can't do Perfect Crime.
I,
I respect the choice, but he can't do it. It
yeah,
surprised me. Please.
it's funny because that one, like, it's been rumored to have been like an alternate choice on set lists or like a rehearsal song, like pretty much since the reunion began. I've seen so many discussions on Reddit of people talking about like, is tonight the night? Are they going to do Perfect Crime? I'm hearing some chatter about Perfect Crime. And I do think that maybe in 2016 that would have flown, but yeah, I do agree with you. Probably not the best move in 2025 because that was one that I was debating as well. If I'm talking just about songs that I love from GNR that I would like to hear, sure, I would love to hear Perfect Crime. It's one of my favorite songs they've ever done, but I want to hear Perfect Crime as performed by Guns N' Roses circa 1991 in Indiana when Axel's throwing the mic stand around and running
Right.
around stage in his leg cast. I don't think I want to have that memory of that song messed with by hearing the modern day band's version of it. So I was that was a tough one for me. I did debate throwing that on my list, but ultimately I had to reconcile, my hypothetical wish list with what is actually feasible for them to do nowadays.
Right. Which is again why there are reasons why we're having this conversation. Each one of us have a different reason with whatever song, yada yada. See, I'm like a Seinfeld character. But he also said dealer's choice. So this one, I think he could pull off. Oh my God, I think he could do it.
That would be really
I
interesting.
would flip out if I was at that show. I would, in a good way. I don't know if that translates. I would flip out, being like, oh my God, it's oh my God.
I
That would
would
be
I'd be pretty excited to hear that one. I remember, God, I remember hearing that song back in the pre-Chinese democracy days, like when I was really just getting into the band. And um, I don't even know. I guess it was publicly available because it was on that soundtrack, but I remember getting some version of it downloaded off LimeWire that my best friend got for me because I was too scared to torrent songs on the family computer. So he would get me all of these things. And I remember like he got me this big batch of like pre-Chinese democracy leaks, and Oh My God was part of that. And yeah, I've always thought it was a absolutely blistering song, just really interesting, and one that I think is slept on.
I agreed again. And LimeWire, kids today, they don't know. They
They have
don't know
no
the
clue.
struggle of destroying your parents' computer or destroying the computer at work or whatever computer that's not yours for a variety of reasons. Anyway, so Matt, that was Matt Wardlaw's list, pretty much. We follow each other on Twitter. I don't think I've ever had him on the show. We gotta make that happen.
Yeah, Wardlaw's
Is
great.
he safe? Is he gonna bite my head off?
Yeah.
Is he okay?
No. Wardlaw's about as friendly as they come.
Okay, just making sure. The last one, Matthew Wilkening. I need to bring up because, and shout out to my friend Graham, Scotland from Scotland, who does all my graphics, working hard on my website, afdpod.com, and on my YouTube page with all the graphics and putting in a lot of work. He said, "How dare that person say Bad Obsession and Pretty Tied Up? How
Mm.
dare they cut those songs? Those are." And you know what? I agree with Graham. Like, how can you? Those songs, I think, still fit like Axel's wheelhouse. He can still do it, and they're great songs, and they're not overplayed. So
Hmm.
he mentioned Chinese Democracy, the song. Um, well, I can see. I think he wanted to replace it with Sorry. Perhaps so I can say okay, not perhaps. See, so many Guns N' Roses songs are also words, so you don't know what you're referencing. It's a
Hmm.
giant Abbott and Costello routine. So he would replace it with sorry. Okay, that's a personal opinion. No worries there. Slither, that seems to be the consensus. Absurd, perhaps the general. Civil War, when they do play it, I don't know. I like it. Uh, Fortunately or unfortunately, the words are still poignant and still reflect today. And a
Hmm.
good chance for him to change his wardrobe. Also for Axel, he needs to change.
True.
Anything goes. Underrated. Shout out to Chris Webber, one of the writers on
Oh
Appetite.
yeah.
Yeah, so who's been very nice. Whenever that song comes up on my Facebook feed, he's like, "Thanks." Like, shout out. I don't think he gets royalties from what I when I say it, but but the other one, I mean, I will. Here, there's the voice conversation. Coma. That
Mm.
is a fan favorite if you're a diehard fan.
Yeah.
But my wife, who likes Guns N' Roses, will go there. Unlike me, when we go to London, she goes to see Dave Matthews. I stay in the hotel. I don't want to see him anymore. My wife is
Yeah.
not that. I want to see Guns N' Roses. I want to experience this. So she said Coma was not, she didn't like it. She's like, I got to be
Mm.
honest, I didn't like this song. And I'm like, all right, well, it's a long song. It's not exactly in his wheelhouse now. I can't hate on you for that opinion. What do you think?
That's a tough one. I've seen them do it a couple times because I caught their 2016 run, a few dates on that. And so, I mean, that was, I would say, the best time in the reunion to see them right at the beginning, I think, when they were still fresh and Axel's voice was really having uh, uh, quite a miraculous comeback, I'd say. And yeah, I think the last time I saw them play Coma was maybe 2019. And even by that point, things were starting to change a little bit. And it's tough because just those last 3 minutes, really, there's just so many words. And it's just
Yeah. I
easy
can't keep
to,
up. I can't
it's
do it.
it's tough. And when you're, alternating between that chest voice and the head voice, when there's that many words and there's like no room to kind of get a breath and adjust and modify the approach, yeah, it can get a little messy. And I think I had seen him do it maybe once or twice where it was like, again, he kind of just had to like stop mid phrase, kind of collect himself and continue doing it. So yeah, I think at this point, I don't begrudge somebody for thinking that that song should be cut. It's just such a huge undertaking. Um, and there are probably better ways to fill that slot. Even other rarities that they could put in that I think fans would be equally happy to hear.
Hey, if they played Corn Shucker back to back instead of Coma, I'd be into
That'd
it.
be, man.
Not only would they debut it live, I know Duff, I think, has played it at his solo shows, but they would
Yeah,
play it live twice for whatever reason, just for me, because I'm crazy.
beautiful.
I love that. So I know people have a lot of opinions. I share the article Ultimate Classic Rock on both Facebook and Twitter, and people are sharing their opinions. But overall, fans are excited. We're all excited. I know we're in the world that you are. Just that the fact that Guns N' Roses are back in business next year is a cool thing, and let's see what happens with new music. I really don't know. More reworked Chinese material that should have been on a triple album to begin with. I don't know whether it's all new. Uh, just so I'm here with Nwai Gasha. Do you have any thoughts, any guesses, or any Vegas odds you want to take on what we're gonna get?
Oh gosh, man. I have long since given up trying to predict what this band is going to do. This
Yeah,
is the
you and me
band
both.
that where they where you think they're going to zig, they zag. I will say I just pulled up a list that I wrote a few years ago now, some of the most intriguing unreleased GNR songs.
Yes.
And I mean, look, there's plenty from that big leak from 2019, I think it was, that I would love to hear in their final forms. I still am holding out for Atlas Shrugged, such a brilliant song. I think that's probably for me my favorite of all the unreleased songs that are like pretty close to completion that we've heard kind of full-fledged, demo versions of them. Um, I'm seeing if there's anything else. Oh, I remember Eye on You. That was an interesting one.
Did you have
Uh,
monsters at the time that you wrote it? Do we have monsters then? I don't
uh,
know if we did.
no, I don't think so.
Have you if you've heard that, right? Or no?
Yeah, what that because that was the physical B-side to the General, right?
In theory, it was. It came out with the leak after, the general got real quiet. Out comes monsters, or in comes monsters. How do you want to approach it? So it was just that leak that went around. I don't know who started it, why it happened. All I know is I listened to it, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I've stopped listening to it because I'm waiting. So I'm hoping at least monsters, and something else has to come out this year.
Yeah.
So I kind of believe whatever breadcrumbs Slash and Duff have given us, I think are real. I think are going to happen. They just are on GNR time, that
Yeah,
which we are not a privy to. So that's is
exactly. I can only imagine that like when one of them, and let's be real, I think it's typically Slash, when he goes on and does an interview and very offhandedly is like, "Oh yeah, man, I'm really excited about these guns things we're working on. We got this awesome epic 10-minute jam that we've been working on. It'll probably be out sometime next year." And then I imagine like the managers and publicists and everyone's phone is like lighting up and they're like, "Oh, Jesus Christ, did he do this again?"
so. I mentioned it before. Tell me about Ne'er Do Well, because again, you're rocking. Now I get to see your Guns N' Roses tattoo often because you're with your cut off leather jacket. I got to ask, did you cut off the sleeves or did it come that way?
Oh no, it's a leather vest.
Leather vest.
So yeah, it came. I'd be pretty scared to make a false move cutting up a jacket like that. So I just
I
got to I'll get it sleeved and I'll get it sleeveless, and then I'll never have to choose. I get
I
the
love
best of
it.
both worlds. Yeah, and that was intentional. I was going back and forth on what arm I wanted to get it on, and ultimately I figured it's going to be the most visible when I'm playing gigs on the strumming arm. So that's the one that's always going to be facing the crowd. So yeah, I wanted
Okay,
I wanted to keep that visible. It was not the only determining factor, but I would be lying if I said it wasn't a factor.
I forgot to ask too. That's funny. I was like, did you get it exactly where Axel? I was going to ask you before where Axel got it. Did you check the right diameter? But no, the fact that it's something that I would do too, because it's a tattoo placement. It's your guitarist. That's why hearing your opinion on Axel's voice and Coma, how difficult it is. For you as a singer knows how difficult that is. I can only speculate.
hmm And I'll admit, I haven't done myself any favors when it comes to like telling strangers in a loud bar, like, oh, what's your band name? Ne'er-do-well. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, we're on Instagram. They're like, okay, I'll look you up. How do you spell that? I'm like,
Apostrophe.
yeah. Oh yeah, man. The amount of flyers that have had it as like three words rather than one with the hyphens. I'm like, look, I know at the end of the day it's not that important, but it matters to me.
Hey, look, it's for those who say Guns and Roses, right?
Exactly.
And where the apostrophe is it before the end? Is it after the end? Or the two apostrophes? I don't know. It's a rite of passage to get your name butchered by by some places. So yeah, it's is it you have your own or Ne'er do Well has their own and what is the correct spelling, including the punctuation?
All right. Deep breath. It's NE apostrophe ER dash or hyphen DO hyphen WELL.
I'll put it in the summary.
Yeah, man. Exactly. Good idea.
Thank you, Brian, for your time.
Oh, thank you, Brando. Appreciate it.
Thanks to the lame ass security, I'm going home.